Okay, what about now? Can you all hear us? Can somebody write a message that there's audio now? Sorry, we had some technical difficulties. We think we got them worked out. What do you think, Jim?
Yeah, it's off of the album Buhan.
We have audio.
It's
What's
off.
that, Bobby?
It's off of Buhan's Delight.
Yeah, that's one of the few that I don't have. I know what that is.
You can't hear me?
I can hear Bobby, and I can hear you, Jim.
He said he can't hear us, but does it have to? Pull up your pants, man.
Yeah, that's like the Dan Aykroyd thing with the refrigerator repairman.
Oh God.
Yeah.
Oh God, I'll never be the same.
Yeah, but you know who did that on stage, man? I had to see that. Paul Bley. He was like on stage at Sweet Basil, man, and it was showing, you know.
Oh, Jim can't hear us now, huh?
What's that?
Jim can't hear us.
I don't know. Jim, can you hear us? I guess they're working it out.
You can hear us, Jim?
Yeah, can you hear us? Okay, you sure we got sound now? Can you hear me? See, technology, man. You know.
I can see you guys' face. That's beautiful.
I mean, what's the point? If it was 1981 again, you still have an alto saxophone, a pencil, a piece of paper, and a piano.
This is...
What does that say? There is a day.
There's a delay.
Oh, there's a delay. Well, I don't mind delay as long as we can be heard.
I don't hear the delay.
Yeah, I don't either. So, all right, can we proceed? Yeah. All right, still stand by. Hey, Bobby, I got one for you. Name the record where the front line is Frank Strozier, Thad Jones, and John Gilmore.
Frank Strozier,
Thad Jones, and John Gilmore.
That's the Art Blakey record?
Nope. Oh, okay. Apparently we're good to go. Well, we can start. I mean, Jim may not know. Should we try again? Okay. Well, it sounds like we're okay. Hi. Sorry about the technical difficulties. We're working out some things with Zoom. I'm Rob Scheps. That's Bobby Watson. And I wanted to query Professor Watson tonight on some salacious details of his life and career. So Bobby, like I said, the first thing I wanted to ask before is, you are a native. You were born in Kansas City, Kansas, correct?
Yeah, I was born in actually Lawrence, Kansas.
Oh, really? So that was incorrect. Maybe I got that on the website, but you were born in Lawrence.
Yeah, Lawrence.
Okay. Was there some connection to KU? Is that why you were out there?
No, my that's where my mom and dad were living. You know?
Okay. All right. So when you started playing the saxophone in school and you got into music, were you living in Lawrence or in Kansas City?
I was in Kansas City. I was in Bonner Springs.
Oh, in Bonner Springs. I went to a haunted house there. It scared the hell out of me. On Halloween. No kidding.
Still there, huh?
Yeah, well, Bonner Springs seems pretty quiet now, so it must have been even more quiet when you were a kid, you know?
Yeah, I remember when they got a first stop sign, a stoplight.
Oh, was that like an event in the town?
It was a one stoplight, yeah.
Wow, well, that's why they call it a one-horse town, right? Isn't that?
It was a one-horse town.
Well, so the question is, when you were in middle school and high school and you were learning to play music, where were you?
Middle school and high school, I was in Minneapolis, Minnesota.
Oh, you were not even here. I had no idea. Okay. And some great musicians came out of Minneapolis. I mean, Dick Oates and Bobby Peterson and
Yeah,
all kinds
Bobby
of people.
Brown.
So basically, your family moved from Kansas to Minneapolis.
Yeah, my dad was in aviation,
Uh-huh.
and he got a job with the FAA, Federal Aviation Agency,
Okay.
and he was the first African American to be hired as a they call it inspector, chief flight inspector, and the entry point for his uh, grade level was in Minneapolis. So in order to get into the FAA, he had to move the family to Minneapolis. Right.
So you mean that's where the particular gig was where they needed to place him?
That's where the opening was, and we stayed there until he had enough rank to move back to Kansas City. Which I didn't know that was the plan because I fell in love with Minneapolis. Me and my brothers, we still have lifelong friends from Minneapolis. In fact, we just right before this whole lockdown, we flew to L.A. because of one of our dear friends, Gary Gardner, who was like I have five brothers or six of us, so he was like the seventh brother.
Okay.
So we went to his funeral.
All right. Condolences.
That was probably one of the last funerals they had in a while,
Sure.
But yeah, we have lifelong friends in Minneapolis.
Oh, beautiful. Well, I had a great experience there. I was there just with a touring Broadway show, but I made it a point to go sit in and meet some of the cats and the guys that I played with and what I saw in Minneapolis was pretty impressive.
I learned quite a bit, Jim
Yeah.
Hamilton, and there was a guy named Solomon Hughes and
Mm-hmm.
Barry Burton drums, and we had a nice little band. We were a rhythm and blues band. I think we were smooth jazz before there was smooth jazz because
Sure.
we played Blood, Sweat and Tears. We played Cool and the Gang
Mm-hmm.
in Chicago, and
So like a hip rock cover band with horns.
yeah, when I did that. We did Gladys Knight. We did The Temptation. We did Smokey Robinson, and
Mm-hmm.
basically I played lead, and I had three horns backing me up. So we were doing smooth jazz when you look back at it.
Okay. My question is regarding playing in that band. Where were you when you first began to play the saxophone? You were in Minneapolis,
Mm-hmm.
and did you start on the alto right away?
No, I started clarinet when I was in Kansas.
Oh, you did. Okay.
I started in the fifth grade, so it kind of jumping around here.
Okay.
We had a school outside of Bonner Springs. We had to take a bus there and back every day. It was like a wooden schoolhouse. I'm hearing like a delay. Is there anyone?
Yeah, I'm hearing a big echo too.
Is it coming? I don't know if it's coming from Jim or something. But anyway, I mean,
So you played the clarinet first. Was that your choice, or was it just like
actually
everybody
started on
was in
piano.
I'm sorry.
I started on piano when I was 10.
Okay.
And then I had asked for piano lessons because my dad repaired instruments and tuned pianos and rebuilt instruments. That's how and he played saxophone in the church. In fact, him and Nathan Davis, God rest his soul, they were friends. And Nathan remembers me when I was in diapers
Really?
because Dad used to go down there and sit in on Nathan's gigs, and the deal was that Nathan was gonna teach Dad some changes stuff, and Dad was gonna teach him how to fly.
That sounds like a fair barter.
Yeah, his passion was music and flying.
Okay.
And, but he was a Renaissance man. He did everything. I mean, he did everything. He was a Renaissance.
So was your pop an alto or a tenor player mainly?
Tenor.
Okay.
Yeah, and And so
And
there
so,
were pianos in the house. So
mhm,
there was always a piano in the house, upright, And so my mother would play the piano, and she played the piano in church. And then when I asked for piano lessons, and when I got a little bit of a skill, I always played by ear, even though I was learning, taking piano lessons. So
sure.
I would play in the church too on piano for a bit,
Okay.
and before my aunt Ann came, and she was like a great piano player, her and her sister. But I started playing clarinet in the fifth grade, and they used to have these. I don't know if you remember. They have used to have these instrument nights, and all the local instrument vendors, would come and set up in the cafeteria with these new instruments,
Okay.
and parents would be there with their kids, and the kids would pick out which instruments they wanted to play,
Hmm.
and you could rent with the option to buy. That way, if your child, didn't pan out,
Right.
didn't pan out in the music,
If they bailed.
if they bailed, you could give the instrument back, no obligation.
Sure.
And so because my dad played saxophone, and I seen him play in church, and he'd play at home at night. He used to have the Gene Ammons record. He loved Gene Ammons, and I went straight for the saxophones. And the band director, Mr. Weber, uh, him and my dad teamed up on me and said,
Oh,
he really seems like he has an aptitude because he's already playing piano. I think it would be better if you start him on the clarinet. So I was a little disappointed, but not really. So I got me a clarinet, and I remember the smell of the instrument. When you open the case, that instrument smell, that
hmm,
instrument with the oil and the grease.
yeah.
And so, I started listening to AM radio, and the first one that I got was Ackert Bilk.
Oh,
People
Stranger on the Shore.
Strangers on the Shore. That's
On
the first
AFCO
one I
Records.
listened on the radio with all the
Okay.
vibrato.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Which is like totally illegal in most symphony orchestras. Clarinet players with vibrato.
Oh yeah. When I got to high school and I took my first formal clarinet lesson, my clarinet teacher's name was Carlo Manetti, and he asked me to play something for him. And so I played Strangers on the Shore, and he goes, yeah, nice, but we don't really use vibrato on the clarinet.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, that's this strange piece of information that every clarinet player gets spanked with at some early point, right?
Yeah.
And I never quite understood it, because if you're in a symphony, all the woodwinds surrounding you, the bassoon, flute, oboe, they're all supposed to have this beautiful vibrato, but not you. So
Yeah, you
really
got to be straight.
so playing clarinet in the orchestra is kind of like being in North Korea. You're in the forbidden zone. It's a
That's a good.
no
That's a good.
vibrato allowed. Yeah. Well, I can see though, there was a thing even, before you came up where there were a lot of band directors who, if you wanted to play saxophone, would insist that you played clarinet first.
That's what happened.
And it's a pain in the ass in a way, but this I know. Every saxophone player I know who plays great clarinet started on it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Like I'll throw out a couple examples like Walt Weiskopf,
Mm-hmm.
Pepito de Rivera, Phil Woods, Frank Porowski, Alex Foster.
Eddie Daniels.
Yeah, those guys who can seriously play the clarinet. I think I started on saxophone. I started on tenor first. Actually, sounds strange, but recorder, taking private lessons at 7 and 8, and then I got a tenor when I was 9 in fifth grade, just much like you. But so I still struggle with the clarinet because I didn't play it first. And
Oh,
and you know about that famous high school in Chicago where all the jazz cats came out of, DuSable High School?
yeah.
Yeah, with Captain Walter Diet. I've seen his name 50 times in jazz books, and
Yeah.
he taught like Julian Priester and Dinah Washington and Charles Davis. But an example is John
Johnny
Gilmore.
Griffin.
Oh, so, yeah, Johnny Griffin, Clifford Jordan, I think.
Yep.
So my understanding is that Captain Diet, his thing was, oh, you want to play saxophone? Well, you play a year of clarinet first, mandatory,
That's right.
right? And speaking for me, the fingerings on the saxophone are a lot easier than the clarinet. What do you think?
Yeah, sure. Because when you push the octave key, it's a 12th.
That's right. Yeah. So
Plus the fingers, your fingers are the pads. And so, what happens is you get this real meaty thing on the end of your fingers.
well, what you mean is that the keys are not solid. They're, you can throw something through them, so your fingers are covering.
Right, your fingers have to cover the hole, so you have to be a little more accurate.
That's right. Yeah, sure.
And, so, and you learn alternate fingers when you go across the break. There's there's like three ways to play C. You got side C, you got side B, you got two ways to play natural.
You know what sums this all up? Do you know what I used to hear in New York that Frank West always said about the clarinet?
Two guys never met each other?
Oh, it was invented by 5 different guys who hated each other.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Well, so the question is, I wonder if you had a clarinet under the piano right now, how would you do if you took it out of the case and started playing it?
I'm respectable.
Oh, you mean your fingerings? You remember everything? You'd still be there?
I grew up high. I learned the Mozart, the Weber.
Oh, okay.
I was out there, man.
Well, you're a better man than I. I'm a good flute player, but my clarinet is not like that.
I need a short barrel, though.
Okay. What, just for pitch?
I can't get high enough. So I'm always a little flat.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And plus, when I start the solo, when I improvise, it's interesting.
Well, you're going to get something different.
I'm not like Paquito and them guys, man. Annette Cohen, all them people.
Yeah.
Byron,
Well, so the question is, how did you make the transition that you wanted to make from clarinet to saxophone, and when?
Excuse me, in high school.
Yeah, around what year? Like 9th or 10th grade?
I would say 9th, 8th grade.
Okay.
The minute I could, I just wanted to play the saxophone always. And the deal was, if I learned to play the clarinet first, I could start playing the saxophone. So a deal is a deal.
You held them to it.
And so there was a saxophone at school, because they always, back then the schools had a lot of school instruments and they were in good shape. So I took a tenor home and I started playing that. And that's when we started our band. We called it the Soul Six,
Okay.
And I had 3 trumpets backing me up, and I played the lead. I would play the lead, the Smokey Robinson, or I would play, the lead. And then I learned, of course, the King Curtis stuff and Junior Walker and the All Stars.
Right, like Shotgun and Memphis Soul Stew and things like that.
Yeah. What does it take? And
well, my question going from today all the way back to that point is, you've been so solidly an alto player in your life for so long. What happened to get you from tenor to alto then?
When I was in high school, every year we would get like some new instruments in. And around 11th grade, it was like 1970, they got into some new altos. And I wanted to play a new instrument. And I opened up, and the alto was in the case so beautiful. It was like a piece of jewelry, And I was like, wow, and I thought, man, if I could play this, well, how beautiful would that be to have this beautiful little instrument in my hand, Still not into jazz, just, I was always an ear player. I always picked stuff off the record by ear. I was transcribing things off of records by way of the piano,
And when you say transcribing, when you were in high school, were you writing these solos down, or were you just learning things by ear without music?
No, they weren't even solos. They were just like, or
So Green Onions by Booker T and the MGs, and then My Girl by the Temptations with David Ruffin.
Yeah. That's Aretha Franklin. You know.
Mhm. Well, so the alto, did it kind of appeal to you more because it was beautiful and shiny and new? It wasn't as specific as I don't want to play the tenor. I prefer the alto.
I just like the way it looked.
Yeah, I hear you.
I guess it was closer, to the clarinet. The saxophone was big. The tenor was always, when I got the alto, it felt more natural, and the tenor was always big, and I was always bumping into stuff, and
Hmm.
you had to be a little bit more careful with that tenor,
Sure.
and me and we just clicked, I just
Hmm.
like, man, I like the alto. It was closer to my sound on the clarinet,
Yeah.
and I had to learn how to adjust my embouchure because it's the total opposite,
Yeah.
an embouchure and sax, you know,
Hmm.
like,
Well, you're not the only one who had to go through a couple of passes to find your axe. Like I read about Coltrane. You know what his first instruments were in grade school before any saxophones got involved? E flat alto horn, which kind of looks like a mellophone or a
oh
French
yeah,
horn.
yeah,
He
yeah,
played, or actually, I'm wrong. It looks like a little baby euphonium, I think,
yeah,
with
yeah.
bell. So Train played E flat alto horn and then B flat clarinet, is my understanding.
Yeah.
But again, another fellow who got the clarinet first before the
Bird
sax.
played that too, didn't he?
I'm sorry.
I thought Bird played that mellow E flat horn or something.
That might be. I
Yeah,
mean,
I think he did
yes,
too. Mhm.
okay. All right. Well, so basically, then, when you graduated from high school and you were playing in these bands already, you were correct me. You were in Minneapolis or you were in KCK?
Well, let me back up a bit. When I was in 11th grade, the second our American history teacher was a jazz drummer at night,
Okay.
and so he could see us. You know, he knew that we were interested in jazz, but we didn't know it.
Okay.
But so he turned the second half of the year from January till the end of the year into jazz history, and he
Wow.
brought these Martin Williams, or I forget his name. He hit jazz history books, jazz in the 30s, jazz in the 40s, jazz in the 50s, up
Hmm.
to jazz in the 60s, and to where we were. And he took us through the whole history of jazz, and he played records for us every day. And the whole class had to take jazz history, but he was specifically doing it for us little group of guys.
Huh.
And that's when I realized that I was a jazz musician, because when I was in concert band, I was always first chair.
Okay.
Except for it was one year I couldn't beat. We used to challenge each other.
Right.
Somebody could say, "I challenge you on this piece," and then you play, she play, and you play. Usually it was a she, because I was in the clarinet section and it was all girls. Which
Okay.
I didn't appreciate at the time.
Yes, I'm sure you did later.
Yeah, but there was one girl, a senior. She was very pretty, and her dad was a professional clarinet. He played around Minneapolis, Dixieland, and stuff. And she could just play the snot out of the clarinet, and I could never beat her. But I digress. But after I became first chair again, because I was always first chair,
Okay.
and so I would be able to add the add little notes and diddly dots and embellishments, and add notes to marches, Susan marches, classical concert band
I,
pieces.
I bet they loved it when you did that.
My band director would go, "Watson, stop padding the parts."
Padding, is that what he called it?
Yeah, he called them padding. Stop padding the parts.
Okay.
Is it Fred Koppelman? Anyway,
That's kind of hilarious, but you were already on your path, I guess.
I mean, I would sit by the radio, and I'd wait for my favorite songs to come on, and I would play them on my clarinet or my saxophone with them,
Hmm.
and I would listen, and I'd watch Johnny Carson, and I just couldn't wait to see the band, and I enjoyed Lawrence Welk because of his instruments.
You know
We
what?
didn't, we didn't have turntable.
My father and I had not an argument about Lawrence Welk once. I came through the living room and he was watching Lawrence Welk, and I said, "Man, this is some corny stuff." And I didn't get along well with my father, but I thought this is a very wise thing. He looked at me and he said, "Yeah, but you know what? That's a good gig." That's a good band.
Yeah,
You
that
know,
is true.
good cats. Like Paul Humphrey, I think,
Yeah,
played
Paul
drums.
Humphreys. Yeah, I met him. I played with him. Yeah,
Yeah, okay.
he was
Well,
bad,
so
man. He was on a Philly Joe level, man. Cat was a
or,
monster.
or maybe you're thinking of Roger Humphreys.
Nope, Paul Humphreys and
Paul,
Roger Humphreys. I played with both.
okay, Paul Humphrey was that bad too.
Yes, he was.
No
Trust
kidding.
me. He was a
Okay,
he was a master. He could like Philly Joe.
no kidding.
He just had that gig, you know.
Well, so now you're getting near the end of high school and you're basically playing alto and clarinet, right?
Yeah, yeah. And I had gotten hip to jazz, so I went out and bought a jazz record, you know, and I got this Charlie Parker compilation. Because when he played Charlie Parker for me, and the example he played was from was Bird with Machito,
Oh, okay.
and there's one track in particular. Uh, it'll come to me. I'm surprised. I've just been playing it lately. It's very short, but that one blew me away.
Hmm.
You know, because the story behind it that our teacher told us, and you know, he just was. It was no music, and he came in and in bird fashion and listened to it, and and it just that was it for me. You know,
So he just copped it, and like everything he did, he just fit right in, right?
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
not a surprise.
I mean,
So well, and how old do you think you were when you heard that Bird record?
I was in 10th grade. That was 1970.
Mm-hmm.
So I was born in 53.
17.
Yeah,
Okay.
about 17. And then we just started buying records. And then, you know how it works. I got interested, and then I started meeting friends that had records.
Yep.
Then I started my record collection. Then, I bought Gene Ammons, of course, because my dad loved Gene Ammons, Richard Winans, Richard Wyans. I mean, and
Yes.
it was just from there. I just sort of backed into the music. We didn't have jazz in the house. I played in the church and rhythm and blues bands with.
But your parents had no problem with jazz. You just weren't being exposed to it at home.
Yeah, my dad. I'd hear my dad play. He loved to fiddle around.
Yeah, like you said, he was trying to learn some changes from Nathan Davis.
Yeah, and he had some jazz chords he played whenever he tuned the piano.
Mm-hmm.
He'd tune the piano, he'd check it out. He had a little thing he'd play on the piano to make sure it was in tune.
Uh-huh. Well, so my question is, did your pop help you with the saxophone, or did he just sort of leave you to it?
He left me to it. He was more on us to. We learned how to repair cars, do electrical work, carpentry work, masonry work. I used to be at the piano, and we were overhauling a '55 Chevrolet, and one of the brothers was out in the garage, and I was in the house with the piano.
Uh-huh.
And he made me come outside and get with the program, and I was upset, but I'm glad he did.
Yeah.
He had to pull me. He pulled me into all this stuff.
Yeah.
How to build things and fix things. And
So now when you're in the house, sometimes you go, thanks, Pop.
yeah, well, I know who to call.
Okay. Well, so Bobby,
You got the right tools, bro. You got to have the right tools.
well,
You got the right tools. Any job is easy. My dad was in the deep end of the pool with tools.
okay.
When he passed away, there were tools in the garage. I didn't even know what they were.
Mm-hmm.
They looked like gynecological. I don't know.
You had to go to tool school.
But Dan Thomas knew what they were.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I let Dan. He was able to look at some of the tools, and whatever he wanted, he could take. He'd pick up some of those. Your dad's got one of these.
Like a trowel wuggle.
What is it?
Yeah, man.
It was in the deep end of the pool. I said, yes,
Right.
he was.
Well, okay. Now I got a question for you.
I'm
So
regressing.
I know that you went to University of Miami for your, conservatory training, whatever. Was that just a regular, just being in 12th grade and applying to music schools, or was it something else from that?
Well, when I graduated, like I alluded to earlier, my dad's plan all along was to get up to a G10 or whatever. And then when a job opening came up in Kansas City, he moved the family back to Kansas City right after I graduated in 1971.
Ah,
And my brother was a star on the basketball team, and had a girlfriend who was a cheerleader. And he begged my dad to let him stay and finish his senior year because he was a year behind me. He graduated in '72,
hmm.
but no, so he uprooted the family, and we all moved back to Kansas City. And I went to Kansas City Community College. Yeah,
KCKCC. Yeah.
yeah. Before the new campus, they was
Uh-huh.
downtown on 10th and State
Okay.
in an old building,
Is
and
this is the same school that Jim Mayer is at now?
it's the same school, but not the same building.
Right.
We were the first class in the new building. It wasn't even finished then when we
Hmm.
moved in, but it was down on 10th and State. It looks like a red brick building, and I had a scholarship in Minneapolis. I was going to go to Normandale. I was still going to go to a junior college because my clarinet teacher taught at Normandale, and I had a full ride for 2 years. And I was going to, who knows? But then we moved back down there, and it was like last minute. I wanted to go to school, so I went to KC, and I auditioned, and the guy gave, and Glenn Trent, he gave me a scholarship, and when I auditioned, he goes, "Why are you here?" I was like, my dad moved the family and blah blah blah, and I met Marlon Cooper, who was a really big help mentor to me as well. He plays saxophone around town. He's in the Educators Hall of Fame.
Okay.
We're really dear friends, and I did a year at the old building, and when the new campus opened up out there on State, 79th and State or something, we moved out to the new building. We had new facilities, and it was really nice, man. So, and then I transferred. I met Dr. Clifton Williams. He came in and did a residency.
Okay.
And Clifton Williams was a big concert band composer, and he was from Arkansas, and he played the French horn.
Okay.
And and also combined with my friend Pat Matheny, we was hanging out, and because once I got back to Kansas City, it was on. It was on then. I was going out. I would go out to the Ramada Inn on I-70, and I sit in with Gary Sibbles. Gary Sibbles on trumpet, Paul Smith on piano, and Pat Matheny. He would play bass for a couple of sets, electric bass, and then he would pick up the guitar. In the last set, they would play jazz.
Okay.
Hotel gig. There used to be a hotel circuit, Ramada, Holiday Inn, back in the '70s. And so I would go out there, and they would play all these standards, and then when they let me sit in, they would play like Red Clay or Straight Life.
I had Straight Life in my head while I was trying to sleep the other night.
Yeah.
I was going over the head, and I was trying to think. I'm trying to think, was it or was it?
Yeah.
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 Well, the question is, why were they throwing just like these kind of like Freddie Hubbard funk tunes at you?
I didn't know any standards, and I always had a good ear. Like I said, I always played by ear.
Yeah.
The thing that I had is an imagination.
Okay.
And I just thought that I was like, crazy. But then I said, hey, I'm a jazz musician. And because I had imagination, I could always, oh, Lord.
Not now.
I don't know why. This doesn't.
Can you push the side of it?
Yeah, there.
Okay.
I don't know why it does that.
Well,
anyway.
So you had imagination, and so at least with these songs, you could certainly get through them, yeah?
Well, yeah, I couldn't. They would just give me chords with two changes. They would play songs like that.
But they were also
Killer Joe. And then one night I said, guys, man, you guys, every time I sit in, you always call those tunes, man. I want to play some of them other tunes, man.
Mm-hmm.
Like Stella, and All the Things You Are, and Autumn Leaves. I want to play those. And so Pat, I started spending a few nights over at Pat's house. I spent the night over there, and he taught me, some tunes.
Okay.
And Monty Musa, guitar player here in town, he taught me a lot of tunes, and they started learning Green Dolphin Street. I remember April. Sort of the
The
first two,
well-known standards.
that you could get through and get to a jam session. I started learning those, and
Sure.
and then I met Rich Matson. We had a place called Turner House,
Okay.
and that's where I met Max Roach down there, Cannonball Adderley, David Baker, Frank West, Ernie Wilkins. They all came through because of the NEA, National Endowment of the Arts. So
Mm-hmm.
Turner House in Kansas City, Kansas, and that's where I met Pat. I met so many guys have come through, and they would be in there, and then we would learn music, and then we do a little concert for them on a float out in the park.
Okay.
And it was just sort of like, then I met Conrad Rucker. He played bass and percussion, and he has a lot of records. So I just started being around guys with a lot of records, and I was learning, and we used to just listen, and then like I say, Rich Matson. I studied with John. Oh, they're gonna kick my butt here in Kansas City. Everybody studied with him here in Kansas City.
Does he have a name something like not Sapola, but something like that?
John. If anybody's out there on Facebook could type in, everybody, everybody studied with him. Pat,
And what was his instrument?
piano.
Okay.
He was a theory guy.
All right.
And he played, jazz. But everybody studied with John, and I used to drive out there every Saturday and take a lesson with him because he was the one. I mean, Rod Fleeman. Ask anybody. Danny Embry.
Bobby, what's interesting about this is
Gerald Spades. I mean, everybody studied with him.
I wasn't in Kansas City at all in the 70s and 80s, but 80% of the people you're mentioning, I know these folks. So what I'm seeing is maybe a lot of people in Kansas City who can really play stay here, and they, you say, oh, these cats, well, they've been here for 40 years playing.
They could all play. I really couldn't. I couldn't play really. I mean, I was in there, but I wasn't. I couldn't play really. They were gonna hire me.
But you didn't have Joe Jones throwing a cymbal at your head. It sounds like you had a lot of support.
Yeah, actually, Joe Jones came in.
Uh-oh.
And he was nice, man. He showed us a tree in the park that he had carved for his girlfriend. And it was still there. He put his initials in this tree.
Yeah.
Or something. But yeah, all those guys were playing gigs, man. Back then.
So there was a busy scene. There were gigs, hotel gigs, clubs.
Yeah, these guys were doing the gigs.
Mm-hmm.
Rod Fleeman. All these guys were much more advanced than I was. And then I went away to school. That's when I finished at Kansas City Community College, and I transferred to Miami because of Clifton Williams and also Jerry Coker.
Jerry Coker, who wrote Patterns for Jazz and used to play tenor with Woody Herman, actually, right?
Yeah, because he was down there. He was the head of the jazz department.
Mm-hmm.
He had started that program, really got it off the ground, and plus Pat. He went down there while I was still in junior college. He was going to Miami. And when he got back on Christmas break, we was talking. He said, Rob, you got to come to Miami. Because I was going to go to North Texas. I was all set to go to North Texas State.
Uh-huh.
And he says, no, man, you don't want to go there. You want to go to Miami. It's much hipper scene. They got the beach scene. You do gigs, We're doing gigs. He said, I go out on a cruise ship on the weekends, or I do gigs on the beach.
Mm-hmm.
I do shows. And he said, and Miami's got 4 big bands, and the rest are small groups, whereas North Texas has 12 big bands.
Right.
And
right.
So
right. North Texas program is incredible, but it seems like most of what you get to do there is big band.
Yeah.
Not as much combo playing. So for blowing, maybe it's a little better to go to University of Miami.
Yeah. Pat did it, and then I met Clifton Williams at around the same time. So it was all serendipitous.
Mm-hmm.
I was backed into it. I didn't come from the traditional jazz household, like Zellis's or the Eubanks or
the Heath Brothers.
People that were coming from a house where they spun records all the time. I backed into it, you know. But my biggest thing was my imagination, and I can't help myself.
So question, so you were at KCK Community College. Was that like a 2-year program?
Yeah, I got my associate degree there.
Okay, so good. So maybe you were what, about 20 when you went down to Miami?
Yeah, I was like 1973.
Okay, but so you were playing a little bit now, you knew some tunes, you had some experience before you even went to that college, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And you know, and it's funny because when I was preparing to talk to you tonight, I was thinking, well, I'm gonna ask Bobby, when he was in Miami, did he meet Pat Metheny, Mark Egan, Jaco Pastorius? And I totally forgot that Pat is from Lee's Summit, and I had no idea that you and he went all the way back like that.
Oh yeah, yeah. I knew his parents, and when I first met Pat, Mike was still in the army.
Okay.
He was telling me how he learned because he said my big brother Mike turned him on to Miles and Wes, and
Mm-hmm.
and we used to listen to Mike's records. You know,
Right.
he had it in the house too because Pat was like playing great at a young age. He
Sure.
was much more advanced than I was at the time, and so
Mm-hmm.
it just sort of like the stars. It's been like these type of things. Just you know, they say opportunity and preparation. You
Yeah.
know, the stars, and a lot of angels have come in my life and just
Well,
pushed me over here. You
yeah.
know,
Well, it sounds like Pat was one of them because the detour you took, you probably wouldn't have ended up in Miami, Florida, if it weren't for Pat
no,
talking to you and saying, "Hey, you got to check out this scene. Come down."
exactly. I was headed for Denton, and so
Yeah.
and we didn't have we didn't have internet or nothing. So I
Right.
researched it. I guess I had to go to the library and check out some school catalogs. But then Pat was
Yeah.
telling me everything about it. So
Mm-hmm.
I was like between that and Dr. Williams, Clifton Williams and Alfred Reed. He went
Oh, the
there.
composer, classical composer.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. So was Clifton Williams, and also John Kenyon was there.
Mm-hmm.
There was like all these pedagogues and music that we play in high school. We played some Alfred Reed, we played some Clifton Williams, and so I mean it was a pretty sharp uh,
Program.
program. All the professors down there were gigging on the
Uh-huh.
beach. They do Frank Sinatra. They were doing Burt Bacharach. They were doing Henry Mancini shows, and
Who were
just
some of
doing
the other who were some of the other teachers that we might know as players?
um,
You know, the faculty who were these guys
well,
who were out gigging.
Gary Campbell.
Gary
Uh,
Campbell, the tenor player,
yeah, Gary
great player.
Campbell and Will Lee.
Oh yeah.
His father was the dean.
Oh
Really,
really?
he was the dean
Okay.
of the music school, and it was
Uh-huh.
a private school. And Henry Fillmore, the Fillmore Marches, he was the band director there for years. And so when he passed away, in his will, all the royalties from the Fillmore Marches went to the music school. So they had a nice stream of, it was Fillmore and Sousa,
Okay.
and there was like a lot of Frederick Fennell, who was
Yeah.
very famous conductor. It was a really elite Whit Seidner, uh, Jocko,
Wasn't Whitsidner the head of
Jocko
the
Ford.
program for a long time?
Yeah, after Jerry left, and then
Right.
Whit did it until he retired, and Jocko was on the staff. Ira Sullivan
Oh yeah.
come
Well,
by all the time. We used to go sit in with Ira every Monday at the Unitarian Church.
okay.
Bruce Hornsby was in the band. He played piano in one of the big bands. Gil Goldstein.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
It was just like Hiram Bullock. Uh,
Hiram and Gil were down in Miami.
they were all at the school together, man.
I met them playing in the Gil Evans Orchestra at Sweet Basil in the early '90s, and I
Yeah.
had no idea about that connection.
Oh yeah, we were to Miami, man. It was deep, man. Phyllis Hyman, uh,
Really?
Cliff Carter. There was a lot of. I'm gonna forget somebody. There was a guy, Mike Gerber, the
Mike
blind
Gerber, the
pianist.
blind piano player.
Yeah, he was there.
Well, you know, Roger Wilder ended up going to University of Miami, and
Yeah,
he's one of our finest pianists here in Kansas City.
yeah.
And Roger is the first one who told me about Mike Gerber.
Yeah, Mike Gerber, man, was something else, man. Gerbs, you
Well,
know.
you know what you're bringing up though, man. Maybe this hasn't hit you because you're just thinking about all these folks. it sounds to me like a lot of the best kind of fusion jazz rock cats in New York in the 80s and 90s were all in Miami together. Gil Goldstein, Will Lee, Jaco Pastorius, Pat Metheny, all these folks that you mentioned, Cliff Carter.
Yeah, Rod Morgenstern. They had a group called the Dregs.
Mm-hmm.
That was the University Rock Ensemble #1.
Oh, there was a rock, so that might explain something because
yeah, we had an R. Blakey ensemble. I mean, Miami
okay.
was hip, man. We was ahead of our time. We had forums every Friday, and we had you could get a PhD in jazz studies back then.
No kidding.
Yeah, I mean, it was way ahead of its time. That was a model. When I came back to Kansas City, that was the model I wanted to use.
Well, let me ask you briefly, did you do some playing or interacting with Jaco when you were in Miami?
Not really.
Okay.
No, we just went to watch him.
But wasn't Melton Mustafa your friend? Isn't that where you met him?
I didn't meet Melton until I got to New York because, I met Curtis Lundy and Carmen Lundy down there.
Oh, they were in Miami too?
They're from Miami, yeah.
Oh, I see, okay.
Well, they're Miami natives. So I met Curtis while I was a RA, a resident assistant. That's how I helped pay my way through school. I had free room and board. And I was the RA of the 4th floor. And I met Curtis and his car broke down one night because he lived down in Homestead, Florida, Perrine. And then he couldn't get home. So he stayed in my room and he ended up crashing there the rest of the year. He was my roommate. And we got to know each other. I mean, he didn't play upright then. He played electric only. He could play. We just bonded, man. And then her sister, we had a band together called Nimbus, and we played down on the beach, And I got my first tuxedo there, and I played the Red Fox show. I did the Dells. I did Nancy Wilson. They used to the instructors used to give us the gigs, the other gigs. They was doing the big gigs.
But they would throw something to the kids who could play.
Yeah, we were doing like the black shows, basically.
Right. But that's great, man, because it sounds like, man, before you even thought about going to New York, you were playing with incredible cats. You were getting mentored. You were having variety. Playing behind Nancy Wilson, man. There's no better singer than that. You go to New York and say, well, I don't care who you got for me. I played with Nancy Wilson,
Yeah, I could double. I met Sweets Edison down there because he was the musical director for at that time for Red Fox, and I could double, so I would get more gigs,
Sure.
And it was, the Whit and them would throw us gigs routinely. We kept working. We was in the union and bought my first tuxedo. I had a big afro out here. I probably could have got more gigs if I would have trimmed it down. But I would braid it, because of the humidity down there. But man, Miami that's where, I had friends who had huge collections of records, and me and Curtis used to go over there with just boxes of blank CDs and just spend days with our friend Deke. He had a record store, and, we would just, there was a lot of retired heavyweight people from the industry. I met Eddie. He was on, oh, man.
Give me a hint.
He was a doubler, like Phil Bodner.
Like Eddie Kane?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Eddie Kane.
You mean like cats who had maybe retired down to Florida?
Yeah, Eddie Kane.
Okay.
The guys like that, man. They were top studio cats. They all went to Florida. Everybody had a tan and a gold chain, man. It was hanging out, man. And, it was beautiful. I didn't go home for Christmas, man, for like 3 years.
Too busy?
No, I didn't want to go home.
Okay.
I Christmas and New Year's in Miami is the bomb.
Okay. Man, so you were working your butt off while you were still in school. You were juggling whatever you were studying with like really a burgeoning beginning of a career.
Yeah, we had a house we rented together, me and Curtis and some other cats. And we used to listen, record ourselves. We used to listen to records all day long. We had fruit trees out in the backyard, man. We was cooking fish and
sounds good, man. Good life.
Miami was beautiful, man. Miami.
Well, then the inevitable question: how and why did you leave Miami for New York, or was there somewhere else in between?
No, Jaco went to New York,
and
he made this record, the first record, Jocko.
Oh, his solo record.
He went straight. Yeah, his first solo record. He went from Miami to New York, and he made this record. And he had Herbie and Hubert Laws and all these cats on the record. And we're like, we always knew Jocko was special, but he came out with that record, and then things started. The air started to change, and then Phyllis Hyman took her band up there with Hiram and the cats. They went up there, and then David Sanborn snatched. They played at McHale's up in New York, and then David Sanborn hired Phyllis's band out from under her, and then Mark Egan and everybody was up there, Danny Gottlieb, and then all of a sudden we're like, hey man, they're going up there, man. Let's go. So I got me a ticket, man, and I had met this cat, man, Morgenstern. Yeah, and his brother had a loft. The loft scene was very big there, and so I went up and stayed with his brother Bill Morgenstern, and he let me crash at the apartment. And I flew up there one night, and it was August 24th. I flew up there, 1976, and it was a Sunday or Saturday. And the next day, I got up and I started walking the streets, man, and I got a Village Voice. And I went straight to Folk City because Albert Davis.
Rest in peace, the Village Voice.
Yeah, Folk City down there, right where the Blue Room across from the Blue Note.
Okay, on West Third in the Village.
Yeah, where the West Fourth, West Third, where the McDonald's is now. But anyway,
right across from the basketball courts where Jocko used to play.
Yeah, it was like they had a Sunday session. And I met Billy Hart that day. I met, all the cats. That was Rufus Reed's first day in town, too.
Really?
I found out later, yeah. And he was there sitting in. I was sitting in. And, the thing about New York, I want to just tell everybody, because all the young cats, when they hear somebody play, everybody going, woo, woo, man, that was killing, man. That kid was killing. And everybody's like patting everybody on the back,
If you say in New York, they wouldn't give it up.
Well, no, what they was asking me was like, nobody said I sounded good. They'd ask me, so who you with? Who you with? I'm going, nobody. Because cats were coming through town, Basie and all the big bands, and when they would have New York, they would all hit the clubs.
Okay.
They would all hit the clubs, and so it was a natural question. They hear somebody playing, and they said, so who you with? And that was the endorsement, because everybody kept asking me, who you with?
I see.
And after a while, I would say nobody, and then this guy I met, Joe Kingshill, who you with, man? I said nobody. He goes, you need to meet the boo.
There you go. Well, Bobby, let me tell you something. They just told me we got about 10 minutes, but I want to condense a lot of your stuff in here, and we could do this again and do part 2 and not cram it. But when you just said that, you meant Buhena, right?
Yes.
So they were telling you got to meet Art Blakey.
Yeah, Curtis Fuller. I met Curtis Fuller, and he was with Basie at the time, and then it worked, with some things, and yeah.
So the question that a lot of people would ask is, what in a nutshell was the trajectory where you ended up being in Art Blakey's Jazz Messengers? Who did you know? Who did you play with? How did that happen?
I was just going around sitting in, man. Like I say, I'm very serendipitous, man. Joe Kingston was an angel, and he was tight with Art, and then he was tight with Curtis Fuller. And so Curtis Fuller took me in his wing, and he was with Basie. And when the cats were off from Basie, they would play up at Storyville. He had a club, and so Curtis took me up, and it was Butch Miles and Chris Woods and Jimmy Forrest and Earl May and and I was sitting there with these cats, Kenny Barron sometimes Harold Mabry, and I was sitting in on whenever they were in town, I'd be up there with them, and but I was staying at the crash pad. I was staying with Hiram Bullock because Hiram Bullock had a crash pad, so I was meeting all the fusion cats down there,
and of course he was already your buddy from Miami, right?
Yeah. That was the University of Miami crash pad.
Okay.
But at night, I would go hang out at the jazz clubs.
Sure.
And so I was like bouncing because I was digging fusion too, and they were all doing studio sessions, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to do that too. I wanted to do it all, but you know, you can't do it all in New York. You got to pick what you're doing, you know.
There are kind of niches and cliques.
That's
You
right.
know, I mean, there's some cats. Oh, he's a straight ahead cat. Oh, he's an avant-garde cat.
Well, he's a Broadway guy. You just can't all of a sudden, if you got a slow month, you think you're gonna pick up a show.
Yeah, right.
You gotta pay your dues.
That's right.
Or if you're in a studio session, nobody's gonna call you to do a studio session. You know, that's another click.
Right. Well, you know, like we both know, I mean, you know, it's you know, you just get thrown into New York in the deep end of the pool and you meet people and you do what you can. And maybe if you play great and you're there long enough and you're not a jerk, maybe then you get some things happening.
Yeah,
You know.
it's wherever the pull, wherever the energy pulls you.
Well, let's put it this way, man.
Survival.
You've made so much incredible music since art on your own with your own bands and your own compositions. But tell us, like, when you joined Art Blakey, who was in the band and who was the musical director then before you?
The band had just broken up, and that's how I got in the band. Because before it was Mickey Tucker on piano,
Mm-hmm.
Cameron Brown, Bill Hartman on trumpet, and David Schnitter. It was a quintet,
Okay.
and the band broke up, and they kept David. He kept David Schnitter,
Yeah.
and then he called Walter Davis to come in
Okay.
because he was a jazz messenger, and so Walter was the musical director.
Oh, excuse me. Walter had been there previously, right? He had done another hit with the
Walter
Messengers.
Davis was a jazz messenger.
Yeah.
So Walter came in, and then it was Mattathias Pearson. Then it got to be Dennis Irwin.
Sorry, who's Mattathias Pearson?
He played with Rasan for a while, and so
Oh, okay, right.
but he didn't last but a week or two because Art, you know, because professionals were saying, "Well, Art, how much we gonna get paid?" And he had Johnny Coles in there for about 5 days because Johnny kept asking Art, "How much we gonna get paid?" You know, when I was with Ray Charles, I made this, and
Right.
and Art was like, "You're a jazz messenger. If I got it, you got it." You know,
Right.
and that for someone Johnny's age and his experience, that wasn't good enough. So in comes Valerie, and then now it's me, Valerie, and David,
Valerie Ponomarev.
and then
Yeah.
Valerie Ponomarev, and then Dennis Irwin,
Yeah.
and then Walter Davis.
Mhm.
And that's the record. That's the band that we did Gypsy Folktales with. I'd only been in the band 2.5 weeks.
And that was your first record with Art, Gypsy
Yeah,
Folktales.
I was hoping to, you know, get some time under my belt so I could, you know, transition and, you know, grow. But
Mhm.
2.5 weeks, we're in the studio making Gypsy Folktales, man. And I had a couple tunes because Clifton Williams used to always say, Dr. Williams used to say, "Man, you're going to get a job as a player first, not as a composer. So always have something in your bag. Write something for the ensemble."
Interesting.
And
Well,
so that's
here's
how
a
I got my stuff on record.
so I have a question about that. So basically, you had Art playing your tunes really right from the beginning. You weren't shy. You didn't wait, or maybe there was even the need for them. You know, like who's got some music?
That's exactly what happened. Because
Mhm.
I was staying with Jim Green, his valet
Okay.
and road manager. I was sleeping on his couch, so Jim knew all about me, and he would tell Art, "Hey, this guy can write music." And so we record a couple of Walter Davis tunes. We record Jody, Gypsy Folktales, Rhymes of Dynamite Lady. You know, one take. And then
Uranus, maybe.
all this downtime, just like Dr. Williams predicted. And so Art looks over me and he goes, "Who got something?" He looks right at me because he knew I had it. So I handed out Time Will Tell,
Mm-hmm.
and then I handed out this song called Hawkman. And we recorded it right there. And David Schnitter had been in the band for like 4 years already, and he hadn't written anything. And,
Huh.
and I've been in the band 2 weeks. And all of a sudden, I have 2 songs on an Art Blakey record. He was like, he went home and scratched out something and came back for the second day of the recording, and we made it work, you know.
Well, so my question to you is, I heard from some of my friends who were in the Messengers that Art used to say, "You don't write, you're gone." Is there anything to that?
Well, he would say a lot of stuff.
I mean, I don't think he always made the bass players write. Not everybody wrote.
No, that's not it. No, no.
Although, if you look at a lot of the Messengers bands,
Valerie,
even
Valerie never wrote a song.
he didn't.
No.
But you look at the band with like Lee Morgan, Wayne, Bobby Timmons, everybody was writing, you know?
Yeah, I mean that's he gave us a free reign.
Hmm.
We were invested. He delegated authority.
Okay.
Paper title. I'm musical director. And
Right.
after Walter did, because I was writing and I would call rehearsals and
But
you know,
Art did always have a musical director. There was always a designated person in the band, right? Pretty
yeah,
much.
yeah.
And how long were you in the Messengers before that was you?
About 8 months.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, Walter left. You know, Walter left. He did a couple tours with us.
Hmm.
Then he left, and he needed young people, man, because older guys, once you get some experience, you're not gonna put up with Art's shit.
Yeah, you mean like waiting for money or just gigs canceled or who knows what?
You don't know. He doesn't give you an itinerary. You don't know when you're working.
Oh,
You know,
really? Okay.
you can't take other gigs because gigs
Hmm.
just pop out of the air. He knew him and Jack Whittemore, his agent, who was a very famous agent. He booked Miles and everybody.
Yeah.
Jack Whittemore, so they knew. But us little young puppies, he never let us know. That
Yeah.
way we couldn't get gigs and get with somebody else. So we were just at his beck and call.
Well, dig
And
it.
it wasn't good enough for Walter Davis and
Hmm.
guys with experience, So
Right.
Walter did him a favor. He hung in there. He hung in there for about 6 months, and then he said, "Boo, I gotta go."
Is that when James Williams came in?
Well, first it was like Albert Daly for a minute. There's some
Ooh, yes.
out there, and then after that was George Cables. We went to the
Uh-huh.
West Coast, and he picked up George because George has been in the Messengers before.
Yeah.
And then that's when they flew out. But everybody was just helping Boo out, because once you're a messenger, you're part of the family. Because he called me back after I left. But,
Hmm.
then we flew James out,
Yeah.
I think maybe George Cables recommended James and
Okay.
brought in Billy. And
Well, I don't know if you know this, man. I mean, you and I have been friends for I hate to say how many years, um, the first time I ever saw you, I was 14 years old, and I heard you with Art at Fat Tuesdays. And I can tell you right now, the band was James Williams, Broski, Charles Fambro on bass, and the front line was definitely you, Winton, and Billy Pierce.
that's right.
And I have actually the tenor mouthpiece that I've been playing the whole time you've known me since we did that Hino record. I've been playing this Link Hard Rubber, and it used to belong to Billy Pierce. And if I ever run into him, he says, "Hey, Chef, still playing my mouthpiece?"
Yeah.
So there's that. But what happened is I had a friend who read in the New York Times, "Hey, man, we were playing in this all-star high school band from McDonald's, and we were playing at the New York Sheraton. And there was something in the New York Times like, oh my God, this new trumpet player is going to, destroy the world. Wynton Marsalis." And my buddy playing baritone says, "We got to go to Fat Tuesdays." And he was like 16, I was 14, but back then they let you in. And so I went and heard that version of the Messengers with you in it at Fat Tuesdays. It was great.
That was toward the end of my
Your tenure?
yeah, we had made several records together with that band, and
Uh-huh.
that, in fact, at Fat Tuesdays, that was toward the beginning of the end because he pulled us backstage after a set, and he was cussing everybody out, and it was that was a standard. He was on a loop. You're around Art long enough, you hear things repeated,
Yes.
and so he was giving his standard cuss you out. You guys ain't swinging. You sound like you're playing out of an exercise book. I want to hear some mistakes. And Winton and them were like cowering.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd heard it before, and I kind of was going like this. Don't worry, everything's cool, everything's cool. And then all of a sudden, Art looked at me, and I looked at him, and at that point, I knew that I had to go because I was messing up the mojo.
Well,
I knew
you
where
told
all
me.
the bodies were buried. I had to leave.
Okay. Well,
Shortly after that, I knew that was like I was on a short. I was a short timer after that because I was pulling the coach cat to his method. He was an institution. I mean, he would do the same thing. I mean, if you listen to an Art Blakey solo, when he does an intro to a tune, and if you do an Art Blakey, even if it's in the middle of a song, you listen to an Art Blakey solo, it sounds you can't tell what year it is. until
Right.
the band comes in. It could
Well,
be
I got two questions for you.
solo is timeless.
So, yeah, that's true. I wanted to ask you though, when you and I recorded together in March, right before this quarantine came down, we were here in Kansas City,
Is
and
it
we recorded,
February?
and yeah, we recorded your piece "Conservation" with an octet, and it came out great. I still got to send you some roughs so you can hear how it went. But we were out in the parking lot, and you were saying that Art said to you when you were going to leave, you said something like, "Well, I'd like to stay through Christmas," and Art wanted you to go, and he said to you, "This ain't the post office." Can you talk about that?
Well, yeah, he'd always say this ain't the well, yeah, because he we were driving back in his Cadillac from Washington D.C. Blues Alley,
Hmm.
and he said, "Bobby, you've been with me four and a half years. You've been up under my armpit. We've been all over the world. You hang out with me constantly, and look at you. You're turning gray yourself. He said it's time for you to go. I think you can fly. Because it's in the post office, Bobby. And I want to bring in some more young cats as many as I can before I have to hang up my sticks. And so I think you've had, and I was feeling mutual. I said, yeah, all right, it's about time. Like I say, that little incident.
So you weren't totally upset. You felt it was time for you to
Oh
go.
yeah, I didn't know how it was gonna end. He
Hmm.
never fired anybody,
Right.
and
Well,
so it was like I was like, okay, great, because I mean I wanted to play with some other cats then, because I've been there. I
sure.
wanted to get out and play, and so he said it was like June, and he said so when you want to leave, Bobby? I said, well, can I do a couple more tours with you? I can start putting some money aside, and we usually break around Christmas. I said, can I work up until the Christmas break? Yeah, sure, sure. So I get back to New York, and then 2 days later I look in the paper and there's a gig. Like I say, we never knew what the gigs were until they called.
Yeah.
And John Ramsey was the road manager then, and he called me and said, Bobby, I called John. I said, what's up, man? I said, you guys are playing at the Bottom Line, man. I didn't hear nothing about that gig. And he goes, oh, Bobby, you're not in that. You're not on that gig. You're not in the band.
Hmm.
And that's how I found out.
Unpleasant way to find out. Was that Branford who came in on alto
Yeah.
after you? Well, check it out, Bobby. I guess we got a few minutes. Can I hit on a couple of the other cats that you played with early on, and then if you would be so kind, maybe we could continue this on another night, because I would love to talk to you about all of your music.
Okay.
Well, so I was looking it up. I remember this great album, Sam Rivers, Winds of Manhattan. So my question is, was that your first record?
No.
It was not.
When I was with Art, Gypsy Folktale was on Roulette Records, who was run by Morris Levy,
Yes.
who
From
was
Birdland.
Birdland Records. He had his brother Stan Levy and all these guys, and so the producer of Gypsy Folktale saw me pull these tunes out on the spot, and he asked me, did I have any more? And I said, yes. So I got a record deal on Roulette, and I did 2 records on Roulette. One called ETA, Estimated Time of Arrival, and the second was called All Because of You, which was a smaller record. I had Curtis Fuller, Bowen from Philly, and James Williams, Victor Lewis, Ray Drummond.
Yeah. So that I was just going to ask quickly. A lot of listeners might not know that record, but Winds of Manhattan was basically Sam Rivers with about 12 saxophone players doubling on flute and oboe and clarinet, and it's amazing music. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, it was 10.
Okay.
And I said, why 10? He said, because there are 10 good notes in a dominant chord that you can explain theoretically. The only 2 are the perfect 4th and the major 7th.
And Sam probably wrote 10-note voicings.
They were all 10-note voicings.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. So that was what we did. Everything, and if it didn't work, long pieces of paper, and we play it one night. He'd take all the parts back, and he'd cut the pages, and then page 4 would become page 2, and page 3 would become page 4, and he'd move them around, and then we'd play it the next night.
Well, let me ask you a question about Sam. I got to work with him in Boston, but only like in a big band situation. And I should stress, Winds of Manhattan was all saxophones and woodwinds, no rhythm section.
No.
No piano, no bass, no nothing.
Mm-mm.
Well, the pieces I played with Sam were like a full big band, like things like, I don't know, Deliverance. I can't remember a lot of the titles, Flux. But Sam set up his tenor, his soprano, and his flute on a stand in front of us. And this was at New England Conservatory, the rehearsal. And we rehearsed for 2 or 3 hours straight. And he was all excited and real, happy and bursting with energy. And we got done, and we all go, yeah, Sam, this is great music, man. We're really looking forward to the concert. He looks down at his three horns and he goes, I forgot to play.
Yeah.
Does that sound like Sam?
Yeah. And he played piano, man. He used to do solo piano tours in Europe.
I'm sure. And he used to play viola and bass clarinet before he cut those out of his thing.
Man, he was a virtuoso, man. He was amazing.
Incredible.
I learned so much from him about composition and finding your own sound. He's the first one told me that you can't escape yourself.
Sam said that.
Yes, and no matter what you do, he said you could just put random notes on a paper and hand them out and play it. It would still sound like you.
Huh. Interesting.
We did an opera with him. We did a 3-act opera, and the whole opera was on 2 pieces of paper. And the opera ran 3 hours. It was called Solomon and Delilah, Samson and Delilah.
Okay.
And it was a 3-act opera, and it ran 3 hours. And all we had was this.
Amazing.
The whole opera was on that 3 hours, and
I believe it because we did a thing with Cecil Taylor in Canada once, and we had kind of a big band self-selecting the people who wanted to be part of it. And he said to the trombones, "Okay, trombones, E, F, let's hear it." Nothing on the page. Well, Bobby, I don't want to run too long tonight. There's one other thing I'd like to ask you about, and let's come back because there's so much to talk about.
It's not fun, man.
We could spend 15 minutes just talking about the incredible singers that you recorded with. That's a thing by itself, right?
Yeah.
So just historically where we're at now, maybe talking about you in the 80s with a medium-sized afro in New York and a mustache, right? Well, when I decided like in the winter that I wanted to come here and record your piece Conservation with all Kansas City cats, and then I thought, why do I want to play this like a quintet? Let me get Bobby, let me get the whole octet arrangement, and that's what we did. Can't wait for people to hear it, including you. But the thing is, when I went on YouTube, I said, okay, let me find Bobby's band playing this. And there wasn't anything like that. The only opportunity to hear a chart that was mostly the same was with George Coleman's octet.
Yeah.
And I'm a big fan of George Coleman, his writing and his tenor playing, and he's still on the planet. He's about 82 or something like that. Can you talk about George Coleman's octet, and just from the way George introduced you on that performance, you're clearly the youngest cat there. Clint Houston is there, and Harold Mayburn, and Sal Nistico, I think. Unbelievable. Yeah, Danny Moore, who was always there. But the point is, it was very clear to me that George respected you as an alto player and as a composer, and he made a point of presenting you. Is that accurate?
Yes.
And he said, wonderful young composer Bobby Watson, and then there's Conservation, and he tore it up, but he must have had to shed, even though he's George Coleman.
I think he did, yeah.
Yeah, so that's an unbelievable band. Can you talk about George and the octet, and then maybe we'll let everybody go for the evening?
Okay, I'll try to keep it succinct. George was there was one set of changes. If we played, we used to have an arrangement of Green Dolphin Street, or whatever. We did Body and Soul. There were a set of changes that George played, and then there was our changes.
The regular changes.
Or the extra changes on top of changes.
Okay.
And he was the only one that took us through the keys.
Yeah.
We'd be playing stuff, and he would take it up. He would take the thing up he'd go chromatically up, say like a minor third, through his courses, and we'd be playing, Green Dolphin Street, and we'd be in G, or G flat.
Right.
And then he would look over at me and he'd point. He'd go, "You got it,"
Right.
And then he'd do it to Sal, and Sal was like, no problem, man. Everybody could play in all these keys. So that was really what I took away a lot. And he was very helpful. I took a few little informal lessons from him. I'd pick his brain.
Well, George was really well known to me as a teacher of professionals. I mean, he taught David Sanborn, Jane Ira Bloom, all kinds of people, right?
Yo, he was great, man. And there were nights when I swear he was playing on train level, Coltrane level. I tell you, when he was at his peak, man. He was playing on Coltrane level, man.
Well, George has that.
George.
He has that beautiful, fat, lyrical sound on the tenor, and he's got incredible chops. And nobody's ever played more harmony on the tenor than him. A few people have played as much, like John Coltrane, maybe Johnny Griffin, Michael Brecker, but Sal Nistico. But nobody's ever played more than George Coleman. And that thing of his of transposing everything in any key, that'll kick the butt of even people who can really play.
I mean, I was ready to do that when I got to New York, but nobody did it. And in fact, do you remember Bradley's? We were playing at Bradley's, and George came in, so we started playing Cherokee. And of course, George, we started going through the keys, and we were going up through the keys, and then cats would come in, and they if they knew, they'd get their horn out and come up and just get in on it. So Sonny Fortune came in, and we were playing Cherokee, and and by that time we was probably in D.
Did he try to play it in B flat?
Yeah, we started in B flat. So, but he got the horn out, but he didn't realize what key we were in. He got the horn out, and he was waiting, and when we got through it, and he'd come in, he went up to the plate, he started playing, and he goes, oh shit. Then he turned around and sat back down.
Yeah. So playing with George Coleman could spank anybody.
He liked to play fast, and he liked to play a lot of keys. He liked to play tempos.
And a quick little coda before we say goodnight. I can't not do this. Sal Nistico, my God, one of the greatest tenor players who's ever lived. So many of your and my students sleep on him. They have no idea about Sal. They don't know how great he is. And what I read was that when Woody Herman was at the Metropole at 49th and Broadway every night for weeks, that Train would come in every night after his own gig to check out Sal, which I believe. What about you?
I believe that. Sal was a monster. I mean, he taught me some stuff too. I mean, I picked his brain and got a few tips from him how to get around the horn.
What did Sal talk about? What did you get from him?
He talked about diatonic sevenths, only not starting on the root. We would take C, and that would be the root. Then we would take C, and that would be the seventh, major seventh, and then C would be the sixth, and then C would be the flat sixth, the fifth, and then C would be the fourth, and so that way you use the whole horn. Because if you instead of moving up the horn as you change keys, you start every key from the bottom of the horn.
Oh, okay.
You do that shit, man.
Do I? I don't know. Well, but I don't think of it that way.
No, but he'd make you, always start whatever key you're in from C, B, or B flat. So
just start from the middle of the horn, kind of.
Yeah, start from the bottom of the horn for all the keys.
Oh, okay. Well, the other thing is I've heard bootlegs of Sal where he gets to play longer. I have a tape somewhere. He's playing on invitation with some cats in LA. And if he's playing rhythm changes. What I noticed about Sal, and I never got to hear him live, I wasn't old enough or lucky enough, is that if you give Sal 33 choruses, he won't repeat himself. You won't hear one lick played twice.
No, George had tremendous respect for him, and Sal was very laid back, very soft spoken, very funny man,
Yeah. Well, Joe Lovano told me that he was on a chairlift going up a mountain in Switzerland playing some festival, and the chair in front of him, he saw the back of this cat's head with this kind of square black haircut. And he said to himself, I bet that's Sal Nistico. And it turns out it was in the back of Sal's head. And then he said something like, I think Joe was with Sal in Belgium, where Sal lived for a while, right? And they were driving around looking for a late night place to eat. And there was a third guy in the car, and he kept giving Sal bad directions, and Sal finally kicked him out of the car. but yeah, Sal Nistico and George Coleman. To me, the ultimate compliment is, who is George Coleman going to hire to be his other tenor player?
Yes.
Hire Sal Nistico because he's the best guy in the world you can get.
Nothing. He couldn't fuck with Sal.
I wouldn't think so, man. But I'm sure that they loved hearing each other play.
They were. I mean, it was great. Sal was. He was a master. He was a virtuoso. I mean, he was all those. All those.
I believe it. Well, Bobby, I don't want to tax the people out there, or we should thank our producer at Live Jazz KC, Herschel McWilliams.
Thank you, Herschel.
And we want to thank our sound man this evening, Jim Lauer.
Thank you, Jim Lauer.
That's right. And Bobby,
we don't want to see his butt anymore, Jim.
I got through about this many of my questions. So,
wow.
So will you do this again with me so we can tell everybody the rest of your story?
Heck yeah, man. It beats me walking around scratching myself.
Well, you know something, man. The best thing about talking to you tonight, I learned some stuff, and you know I love you. But the best thing about it is I forgot about the virus.
Yeah.
Right? Just for a minute. And we hope that we were able to bring maybe some love and some light and some stories into people's lives where maybe they got to forget about that shit for a minute.
Hey man, we gotta do it again. Let's do it next week, man.
Let's do it next week. So thank you, Jim Lauer, and thank you, Herschel McWilliams, and thank you, Bobby Watson. It's always a pleasure, man.
Thank you. Same bad time, same bad channel.
Yeah. So next week, let's talk about your music and all the singers and the Lundy family and you know, and the Gates Suite and all of those things.
Okay.
All right. Okay. Sign it off. Thank you, Bobby.
Jim Lauer, pull up your pants, man. I can't hear me.
Okay. All right. Good night, everybody. Thank you. Thanks, Bobby.
Thank you.